Now you're playing one of the premier revolutionary black freedom fighters in American African history, and you get asked a question about racism and race. And instead of answering it in support of the people whose hero you playing, you backed off of it. You cowered out of the question, Daniel KALUUYA. And if you want to defend him, go ahead. But he cooned out, and I'm going to call it out. He cooned out, and I'm going to call it out. He was asked about race and racism, and he said, why do we have to talk about this? And then he said, I'm Daniel, who just happens to be black. Peace and black power. Peace and black power. Peace and black power. This is the Prince of Pan-Africanism, the Minister of Education for the African race, the Minister of Mental Health for the African race. I am live and direct, brothers and sisters, on this glorious March 3rd, the anniversary of the founding of the Freedmen's Bureau here in the United Snakes, which was supposed to help those Africans who fought in the Civil War and was supposed to help those newly freed enslaved Africans in America get an opportunity to build themselves up by their bootstraps. But we know that the Freedmen's Bureau was sabotaged, underfunded, and handicapped by the very same United States government that created it. Today is a most important live stream, a most important conversation that we must have. The Pan-African family from around the world, we must have this conversation. It's a long time coming, and it needs to happen. There is a conflict of interest. There is a controversy, if you would, brewing amongst the British African family and the American African family. There's an issue arising amongst the two African families in the two most powerful white supremacists in European societies in the world. That is Great Britain and the United States of America. So we have to talk about this. But before we get into that, I want to say this. If you are not an African, we asked you to respect our right to meet as a family. If you are not an African in Europe, if you are not a continental African, if you are not a Central or South American African, if you are not a Canadian African, Australian African, if you are not one of our Africans in Asia, if you are not an American African, please hop off the live right now. Hop off the live right now. You know that you would not let us invade a meeting of European Jews. You would not let us invade a meeting of Chinese. You would not let us invade a meeting of Anglo-Saxons. You would not let us invade a meeting of Mexicans. You would not let us invade a meeting of Latinos. So get out of our meeting. This is an African family function. This is a private, global African family function. This is a private, universal African family function. If you are not an African, hop off the live right now. Respect our right to privacy. Respect our right to privacy. Respect our right to privacy, brothers and sisters. I am triple casting today. I'm triple casting on Twitter and Instagram at DrUmarJohnson. On Twitter and Instagram at DrUmarJohnson. On Twitter and Instagram at DrUmarJohnson, and on Facebook, DrUMAR Ifatunde. On Facebook, DrUMAR Ifatunde. On Twitter and Instagram at DrUmarJohnson. We're going to have a conversation. And after I make my opening remarks, I'm going to turn it over to the people because I serve the people. I live for the people. I live for African redemption, African resurrection, African liberation, here, there, and everywhere. What I want for the African in America, I want for the African in the UK. What I want for the African in the UK, I want for the African in the Caribbean. What I want for the African in the Caribbean, I want for the Africans in South America and in Central America. And what I want for the Africans in Central and South America, I want for the Africans in Canada. And what I want for the Africans in Canada, I want for the Africans in the South Pacific. And what I want for the Africans in the South Pacific, I want for the Africans on the continent. And what I want for the Africans on the continent, I want for the Africans all around the world. See, anybody can be a Pan-Africanist when it's convenient. Anybody can be a Pan-Africanist when it's convenient. But when somebody from your particular African community does something against another African community, do you speak up? I said when somebody from your specific African community does something against another section of the global African family, do you speak up? That's the question. That's the question. It's easy to be Pan-African when everybody getting along. But what about when somebody from your community does some anti-African behavior? What if they commit an offense? What if they get off code? Do you speak up? Do you speak up? Brothers and sisters, I'm going to open up with some comments. I just hopped out the shower, so I'm a little wet. Just hopped out the shower. But I'm going to open up with some comments, and then Facebook Live, Instagram Live, mostly Instagram, you'll be able to tap in with your comment. I want to know what you think. And although we're dealing with an issue of conflict between the American African family and the British African family, all Africans are welcome to share their thoughts and opinions. And if you're not able to tap in through Facebook, and if you're not able to tap in through Instagram, you can WhatsApp me your comment or question. I repeat, for Africans all over the world, if you have a comment on this topic, if you have a question on this topic, if you have some food for thought on this topic that you would like for me to read to the global African family watching, send me a message through WhatsApp, not my direct text. American Africans, please listen. American Africans, please follow directions. My Brooklyn and New York and North Carolina and Florida and Tulsa, Milwaukee and Philly and Boston, if you have a comment or question, don't send it straight text. I'm not checking my regular text message during this live. I'm not checking my regular text message during this live. I'm only checking WhatsApp. My WhatsApp number is the same as my regular number. My WhatsApp number is the same as my regular number. And my WhatsApp number is 215-989-9858. 215-989-9858. 215-989-9858. Question or comment? Okay? Send it to me in WhatsApp. I don't know what your country code is. That's on you. If you're sending a message from Uganda, you got to know what that country code to America is. If you're sending a message from Black Panama, Black Brazil, Black Haiti, you got to know what that is. If you're sending a message from Black France or Black UK, from Black Ireland, if you're sending a message from the blacks in Japan, blacks in China, blacks in Toronto, wherever, blacks in Quebec, wherever you are, blacks in Mexico, you got to find out what your country code is. But my WhatsApp number is 215-989-9858. 215-989-9858. So the issue at hand, and please, I want to thank all those brothers and sisters who've been donating to the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. I want to thank all those brothers and sisters from the UK to Black Africa, from the Africans in Asia to Australia. The Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy is the first school in the modern era to be purchased and built and renovated with funds from every African community in the world. We've already made history. We've already made history. So brothers and sisters, again, the WhatsApp number, if you have a question or comment, do not call me, send a message. Do not call me, send a message. I will read your message. I'm not taking calls on WhatsApp. I'm only taking tap-ins on Facebook and Instagram. I'm not taking calls on WhatsApp. I'm only taking tap-ins on Facebook and Instagram, brothers and sisters. 215-989-9858. We have a live block party going on Instagram. The coons are up and about. They had too much coffee last night, a lot of caffeine in the Instagram chat. So I'm sending some people to the block party. Get me some seafood salad. I want me some deviled eggs. You understand me? Bring me a Philadelphia cheesesteak, extra mayonnaise, sweet peppers, and pickles if you get sent to the block party. The issue at hand, the question that we will be discussing today is whether or not the British African should be allowed to play the American African hero. I repeat the question. Should the British African be allowed to play the American African hero? One more time, and then I'm going to answer the question for me. And I want my British Africans to listen in and pay attention. First of all, my position has not changed. from the video that went viral. My position has not changed at all, but I'm going to clarify my position. I don't mind if you don't agree with me. That's all right. I am a leader, not a follower. Believe me, I could care less whether you agree with me or not, but I stand on truth and I stand on the principles of Pan-Africanism. I'm not loyal to the American African or the British African. I'm not loyal to the American African or the British African. I'm not loyal to the American African or the British African. I'm not loyal to the Canadian African or the Australian African. I'm not loyal to the Jamaican African or the Haitian African or the Nigerian African or the South African. The only thing I'm loyal to is Africa and her liberation. Let me say it one more time. The only thing I am loyal to is Africa and her liberation. I'm not loyal to no territory that my ancestors was forced to come to. I'm not loyal to no flag that no oppressor drew and stamped upon the skin and flesh of my ancestors. I am for Pan-Africanism. I'm a real Pan-Africanist. I'm not the one who scream RBG when it's convenient. I'm going to scream it all day long. And if Denzel Washington does something against the British African family, and if a British African actor does something against the American African family, I'm going to call him out. If an American African goes to Africa and disrespects Africa, I'm going to call him out. I'm not one of these fake Pan-Africanists who Pan-African when it's comfortable. I'm Pan-African 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Let us be real. So with this question of whether the British African should play the American African leader, let me answer this for me. First of all, I want to clarify. I don't care how many roles the British African has in America. I don't care if you play an American football player. I don't care if you play an American basketball player. I don't care if you play an American rapper. I don't care if you play an American African doctor or an American African nurse or an American African celebrity. I don't care. I have no problem with the British African coming to America and playing as many roles as you want. I don't care. Get all the work you can. I'm only concerned with one particular role. I want to be clear, because some of you think I got an issue with the British African coming over here and playing the American African on big screen. No, I don't. The British African can come and make that money and build your career. You are part of my family and I love you. But guess what? When it comes to playing the freedom fighters, let me be very clear. You can play Michael Jordan all day you want. You can go play Randall Cunningham all day you want. You want to do a film on Jay-Z? Go do it. You can play any actor, any athlete, any regular person. I don't care. You can play the American African all day long. But when it comes to the freedom fighter, the key word is freedom fighter. If you are going to play the role of a freedom fighter, you better meet 3 criteria for me. If you're going to play one of my ancestors on the big screen, then you better fulfill 3 criteria for me. Number 1, you better have kinship with the American African. You better have psychological kinship with the American African. If you do not see me as your brother, if you do not see us as your brothers and sisters, then don't play our freedom fighters, period. If you don't like it, I don't care. If you don't have kinship psychologically, if you don't see yourself as one of us, don't play our freedom fighters, period. That's Pan-Africanism. I'm going to get in your ass today, whoever got something to say. I'm not no fake Pan-Africanist walking around with robes on, not standing up and saying what needs to be said. I'm giving it to you real. Don't come over here talking about I'm just a black British being an actor. I'm just acting. Excuse me. Fred Hampton said, since we want to talk Fred Hampton, let's talk Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton said, everything is political. Fred Hampton taught everything is political. There's no such thing as I'm just an actor. Do you not know that media is the #1 form of propaganda in the world? Media is the #1 form of propaganda in the world. Media is the #1 form of propaganda in the world. There's no such thing as I'm going to just go to America and be an actor. I'm going to just go to the UK and be an actor. I'm going to just go to Africa and be an actor. No, 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 no. Everything is political. You can't duck and hide behind your career. When Dr. Umar goes into a school to evaluate a kid, I don't say, well, I'm just the school psychologist. I can't get into this whole school to prison pipeline. I'm just the school psychologist. I can't get into this whole, are black boys being systematically medicated? I'm just here to do a job. I'm just here to test your child. I can't get caught up into whether or not special ed is going to benefit your child. I can't do that. I'm sorry. Everything's political. So number one, you must have psychological kinship with me. That means you must be a Pan-Africanist. If you're not a Pan-Africanist, you don't play no heroes. That don't just go for America. That go for the UK. I do not want a coon from Britain or, a coon from Brooklyn or a coon from Philly or a coon from Detroit or a coon from Chicago. I don't want them going to the UK playing one of your freedom fighters. I would speak up against them in defense of you. You don't go to another family of African people as a coon and think you're going to represent one of their ancestors on the big screen. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. I do not have a separate criteria for American Africans than I have for the continental Africans. I don't have a separate criteria for the Caribbean Africans than I have for the British Africans. My criteria are the same. I don't switch. I don't switch. I'm consistent with mine. I don't have rules for different family members. Same rule. If you are a coon, you don't play an ancestor in Africa. If you are a coon, you don't play an ancestor in the UK. If you are a coon, you don't play an ancestor in the Caribbean. If you are a coon, you don't play an ancestor in Central or South America. My criteria is universal. My criteria is universal. So number one, if you a coon, don't play no freedom fighter nowhere on this planet. That's rule number one. You don't play no freedom fighter if you are a coon, whether you come from the US, UK, or anywhere else. That's rule number one. Rule number two. Let me get rid of this chick with the blue hair. It's clearly a coon. Rule number two. If you're going to play a freedom fighter anywhere in the African diaspora, if you're going to play a freedom fighter anywhere in the African diaspora, if you're going to play a freedom fighter anywhere in the African diaspora, if you are ever asked your opinion on the racial oppression of the group whose freedom fighter you will be playing on the big screen, you have an obligation to speak up and speak out in support of that particular portion of the African family. I'm going to say it again. Rule number one, you better have psychological kinship with me. You better be Pan-African. Rule number two, if you are asked how you feel about what's happening to the American African, what's happening to the continental African, what's happening to the Caribbean African, what's happening to the European African, you better speak up and speak out in support of the people whose ancestor you're making money off playing on the screen. That's number two. Now let me give you my number three. I want to make sure we clear today. You can disagree with me, but understand what you're disagreeing with. I'm not winning no popularity contest. I don't need that. I don't need nobody's approval. I spent my whole life being Dr. Umar, and I'm going to die being me. I don't need your approval. If I didn't need the white man's approval, I damn sure not going to need yours. Do you understand? This ain't no popularity contest. I'm going to speak truth, period, and let the chips fall. And the third criteria, if you're going to play any African hero in the diaspora. Now, we're talking British and American, but this applies for everybody. I only have one set of principles. I only have one set of principles, and they apply to everybody. Rule number three. So number one, you better have psychological kinship with me. You better be a Pan-Africanist. You must see me as your brother, your sister. We better be family. That's number one. Number two, if you ever asked about my condition, you better speak up and speak out. And rule number three, if you notice. Rule number three, if you notice. Rule number three, if you notice that the white power structure is trying to use you against your brothers and sisters somewhere else in the world, you have an obligation to speak up. If you notice the white power structure is trying to use you against your brothers and sisters elsewhere in the world, you have an obligation to speak up and out against it. I want to be very clear about this. In South Africa, we had and may still have a situation of xenophobia, where allegedly some of our South African brothers and sisters were harming other immigrant Africans from the continent who were coming into South Africa. They did not want them there. Allegedly, because I think some of this was CIA and FBI, but allegedly in MI6, but allegedly when these Africans from different countries came into South Africa, the South Africans would abuse them and harm them and repel them, allegedly. Dr.UMAR was one of the first to speak out against that. And my message to the South African was real simple. Until you throw out the South African Jew, until you throw out the South African Anglo-Saxon, until you throw out the South African Indian, until you throw out the South African Chinese, you have no business to be harming your own brother and sister for coming into South Africa. Until you throw out the enemies of South Africa, how dare you lay a hand on another African who comes into South Africa? However, I also clarified, for the African coming into South Africa, you cannot come into South Africa and let the white power structure use you as a strike breaker. I also said to the continental African migrating to South Africa, you can't come into South Africa and let the Chinese use you against the indigenous South African. You can't come into South Africa and let the East Indian use you against the native South African. You cannot come into South Africa and accept less pay, which will lead to the unemployment of millions of South Africans who were there before you got there. So don't tell me I don't speak out. Whenever I see Negroes, whenever I see a Negro anywhere in the world letting the white power structure use them against other Africans, I speak out, because part of being a Pan-Africanist is you have to police the tribalism that tends to spring up every once in a while amongst our people. Part of being a Pan-Africanist is you have to police the tribalism that our post-traumatic slavery disease and post-traumatic colonization disease sometimes causes, and we all have it. I don't care if you in the UK, I don't care if you in the Caribbean, I don't care if you in Australia, the South Pacific, the continent, or the United Snakes. Post-traumatic slavery disease is in all of us. Post-traumatic colonization disorder is in all of us. So those tribalisms will pop up. Those tribalisms will come. So when I spoke out against certain British actors who I considered to be coons, I never called all British Africans coons. You are a liar and you distorting my words. If you don't like me, don't like me. I don't need you to like me. But don't you dare misrepresent what I said. I can speak for myself and I don't need you to interpret it. What I said was, I don't need no British African coon. Not the people, but the individual actor who will come over here and play a freedom fighter and could care less about the people that freedom fighter died for. I'm going to say it again. I was talking to individual actors who will come over here and play a freedom fighter and care nothing about the people that the freedom fighter died for. That sister who played Harriet Tubman had no business playing Harriet Tubman. You dated 2 European males and you're married to a woman. You had no business playing Harriet Tubman. And then she made disrespectful comments. I saw the Twitter tweet. They're still up there, where she mocked and joked and trivialized Black Ebonics, the African dialect. So let me give that blonde-haired coon a little education lesson. Let me give her a little education lesson, because as a psychologist, I study language. The language that you were laughing at, you little coon, and now you're going to play Aretha Franklin. I will bet my life that Aretha Franklin would not approve of you playing her. Yes, Jennifer Hudson got the role for the big movie, but she got the role for the miniseries. Aretha Franklin would not approve of you playing her, mocking her people. Because if you listen to Aretha Franklin talk, Aretha Franklin spoke eloquent Ebonics. Aretha Franklin was an Ebonicist par excellence. So if you making jokes about Black language in America and you gonna play a freedom fighter artist who spoke Ebonics, then you're a walking contradiction. You could take it or leave it. But let me educate you. The Ebonics that the American African speaks is African language. We speak just like our ancestors speak today in West Africa, you coon. The only difference between us and them is they have African vernacular and vocabulary. We use the words we were enslaved to use. So we're using the English words and the English vernacular, but the morphology, the syntax, the structure, the philosophy, and the nuances of the African American Ebonics is identical to every West African language. So Ebonics is not broken English. It is African tongue without the African vocabulary. But she wouldn't know that. But she wouldn't know that. But she wouldn't know that. So yes, I got a problem with her playing Harriet Tubman, whose grave I visit every year, who struggled with my ancestor, Frederick Douglass. You damn right. No coon should be playing Harriet Tubman. Let's move to the next one. Let's move to the next one. Let's move to the next one. The Negro who played 12 years a slave. He has Nigerian ancestry. I have Nigerian ancestry. He has Igbo blood. DR.UMAR has Igbo blood. Beautiful. Here's a picture of Nnamdi Azikiwe right here. Here's a picture of Nnamdi Azikiwe, one of the liberators of Nigeria, right here. Do you know how I got this? As Minister of Education for the Most Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, I went to Nigeria and I met the son of Nnamdi Azikiwe, who went to school right here at Lincoln University. I met his son and he gave me this plaque with his father's face on it. I love the Igbo people. I love the Yoruba people. I love the Hausa people. I love all Nigerian people. So it has nothing to do with him being Nigerian, because so am I. But he got a white woman. He got a white woman. And because he's cooning, he has no business playing an enslaved African who survived 12 years under bondage and ultimately got his freedom again. He's a coon and he should have never played the role. Let's move to the next one. Let's move to the next one. The sister who played Tupac's mother. And from what I was told, she's not from the UK. She's from Zimbabwe, but I'm going to deal with her nonetheless. And I love the Zimbabwean people, and I'll be coming to Zimbabwe soon. But she made some comments along with Lupita. She made some comments along with Lupita that African Americans, and I'm paraphrasing, I got to get the exact word, but her and Lupita said something to the effect that African Americans should not be playing Africans in film. I beg your pardon? African Americans should not be playing Africans in film, but you brought your ass over here and played Tupac's mother. But you brought your ass over here and played Tupac's mother. But you brought your ass over here and played Tupac's mother. See? Pan-Africanists, we got to expose that. If you are really African people first, if you are really for the universal solidarity and resurrection of African people, you got to call a coon when you see a coon. You got to call a coon when you see a coon. If that's the way you feel, sister, don't play another one of our freedom fighters if you want to play tribalism, because I don't play tribalism. I don't get into tribalism. I rise above it. I don't get into it. They'll tell you when I go to Africa, I don't want to hear about Zulu-Xhosa conflicts. I don't want to hear about Wolof-Mandingo conflicts. I don't want to hear it. I want to know how we can sit down and unite. Because the same strategy that the white man used to keep us apart 400 years ago, he's still using right now. He's still using right now. So we done dealt with 12 years of slave. We done dealt with All Eyes on Me. We done dealt with Harriet Tubman and Aretha Franklin. Let's go to the coon who played Dr. King in Selma. Non-African spouse. He had no business. Non-African spouse. He had no business. I'm not going to disrespect them as people. I'm not going to disrespect them as brothers and sisters. But you have no business playing a freedom fighter of mine when your behavior is anti-African. If the black woman ain't good enough for you, then you ain't good enough to play my ancestor. If the black woman ain't good enough for you, you ain't good enough to play my ancestor. If the black woman isn't good enough for you, you ain't good enough to play my ancestor. So now let's come to Daniel. KALUUYA. Let's come to Daniel in Fred Hampton. Now, in respect to my British African family, none of you had an issue with the other people being identified as coons. What I received, because I've been communicating with my British African brothers and sisters for the past couple days since the video went viral, and some of you were telling me, Doc, we understand about the rest of them, but Daniel ain't like them. This is what you told me. This is what you told me. You said, Doc, Daniel is from the hood. He's from Peckham. He's a brother. He know what it's about. He ain't like them, Doc. So now I got to ask you a question. If Daniel KALUUYA ain't like the other ones, answer me this question. When he was interviewed and asked about race, when Daniel was interviewed and asked about race, he said, why do we have to talk about this? Now you're playing one of the premier revolutionary black freedom fighters in American African history, and you get asked a question about racism and race. And instead of answering it in support of the people whose hero you playing, you backed off of it. You cowered out of the question, Daniel KALUUYA. And if you want to defend him, go ahead. But he cooned out, and I'm going to call it out. He cooned out, and I'm going to call it out. He was asked about race and racism, and he said, why do we have to talk about this? And then he said, I'm Daniel, who just happens to be black. I'm Daniel, who just happens to be black. Interesting. Interesting. Were there any Pan-Africanists in the UK who sent Daniel a private message and said, bro, that was inappropriate, bro? As Pan-Africanists, we are proud to be African. As Pan-Africanists, we identify as being African first. We are African race first, Daniel. So you're not Daniel who happens to be black. You're an African who happens to be Daniel. You're not Daniel who happens to be black. You're an African who happens to be Daniel. He backed up. He cowed out. It was a weak, coward move. You said nothing about the police genocide against black people, but you playing an ancestor who gave his life. But you playing an ancestor who gave his life fighting police genocide, but you don't think we have to talk about it because after all, you just Daniel who happens to be black. And for my British African family, I love y'all to death. But if you're going to co-sign that shit, don't ever call yourself a Pan-Africanist no more. My British Africans, I love you to death. But if you're going to co-sign that shit, don't ever call yourself an African again. And then I know what you're going to say next. Don't call him no name. Don't call him no name. because he's a young brother. He's only in his 30s. He got room to improve. I'm not throwing Daniel out. I'm not throwing none of them out. Who knows where the political consciousness will be 5, 10 years from now? My point is, I am identifying a contradiction that is occurring in this time and space. Once upon a time, Malcolm X was a coon. Do you understand me? Once upon a time, one of the greatest Pan-Africanists of all time, Malcolm X was a coon, engaging in anti-African behavior. So we don't throw nobody out. Everybody has a chance to redeem themselves. But I just wanted to clarify that for my brothers and sisters in the UK who came to Daniel's defense but did not once check him on his anti-African behavior. But for my brothers and sisters in the UK who came to his defense but didn't once check him on his anti-African behavior, I needed to expose your Pan-Africanist hypocrisy. That's all I'm saying. Now, then you're going to say, well, he came back and he clarified it later after he got chewed out. He came back and he clarified it later after he got chewed out to protect his career. Okay? The point that I'm trying to make is when you engage in any behavior that is anti-Pan-Africanist, I don't care who you are. I don't care who you are. For example, y'all know in the United States, we have 2 groups that have popped up. One of them founded by an ex-pimp and another one founded by a rainbow gang sister. We have 2 African-American tribal groups. One founded by an ex-pimp, the other founded by a sister who belongs to the rainbow gang, who are influencing politically uneducated American Africans to identify with their oppressor's flag. One group uses the traditional oppressor's flag. The other group has remixed it, but it's still the red, white, and blue oppressor's flag. They identify as being slaves. They identify as being descendants of slaves. They identify as being Americans, but they will never, ever call themselves African. They are useless. They are dangerous, and they're influencing a lot of politically uneducated young people. I go hard on them all the time. I go hard on them all the time. Don't you dare mistreat an immigrant African in the United States. Don't you dare mistreat an immigrant African in the United States. Don't you dare mistreat an immigrant African in the United States. They haven't done nothing to you. They haven't done nothing to you. I heard one coon say, well, don't Africa owe African Americans reparations? Don't Africa owe excuse me? Owe you reparations for what? For what? The transatlantic slave trade was a European operation. Sure, you had a few African nations that participated. Yes, you did. But the enterprise of American slavery was 99.9% a European enterprise. How dare you use the European narrative that Africans enslaved themselves? How dare you use the European narrative that Africans enslaved themselves, and so the African owes you reparations more than the European? You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. And if you want to make that argument, if you want to make the argument that the continental African owes the American African reparations, I could make the argument that the continental African could also lay claim to the American African owing them reparations. Do you want to know why I say that? Why could the continental African say the American African owed them reparations? Because whose talent did Michael Jordan make billions of dollars off of? Whose talent did Michael Vick and Cam Newton, whose energy, whose DNA, whose ancestry allowed them to become multimillionaires? Oprah Winfrey, whose intelligence did you use to become the richest woman in America? If you want to play this who owes who reparations, the African on the continent can argue you owe them reparations because you stood by with your $2 trillion. For the last 21 years, you stood by with your $2 trillion a year for the last 21 years, and you let the Chinese come into Africa and you did nothing to help them. You let the Arab come into Africa, you did nothing to help them. You let neo-colonialism come into Africa, and although we had the financial ability in America to do something about it, we did nothing. So don't come to me about no African owe me reparations when your gross national product is 20, 30, 40, 50 times greater than most African countries. You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. African immigrant. You got 3 million African immigrants in America. You got 3 million African immigrants in America, and you want to blame them for the condition you in. Last time I checked, the feminist movement stole all your civil rights. Last time I checked, the European immigrants stole all your civil rights. Last time I checked, they were using Mexicans to take you out the labor force. Last time I checked, the LGBTQs stole all your rights, but you don't want to pick on them because you're scared of them. You don't want to pick on them groups because they're powerful. You don't want to pick on them groups because they're organized. You don't want to pick on them groups because they got money. So what you're going to do is pick on the immigrant African who's done nothing to you, and you want to make them the scapegoat for your problems. That ADOS and that FBA bullshit, get it out my face. Get it out my damn face. And so just like I will expose American African coonism, I will expose British African coonism, and I'm going to tell Daniel to his face, and I know you watching this somewhere, brother. If you want to play freedom fighters, then you speak up for the people whose hero you representing. If you can't come over here and say a word in support of American Africans, don't play us. And I don't care who don't like it. I'm not Pan-African when it's convenient. I'm Pan-African every day. Now, before I turn it over to you all, let me make a few comments. Before I turn it over to you all, listen, if you're not from Africa, I'm not going to argue with you. I respect your right to identify yourself. But do me a favor, all my Aboriginal, Indigenous, I didn't come from Africa. Do me a favor and stay off my live, because my live is for Africans. My live is not for you all who ain't from Africa. But I promise you this. If we took some blood and did a DNA analysis of all you Native American Negroes, I'm willing to bet my life that if we did a DNA analysis of all you I ain't from Africa Negroes, I promise you, you're going to find out you African. See, that argument that we not from Africa only holds up in theory. That argument that we not from Africa only holds up in philosophy. That argument that we ain't from Africa only holds up when you're having a YouTubian intellectual masturbation session. But once you're done having a YouTubian intellectual masturbation session, and you start looking at the anthropological evidence, and you start looking at the genetic evidence, okay? When you start looking at the artifacts, you get one conclusion. And we're African all day long. And so are you. But you Negroes will never do a DNA analysis on your own blood. Because you know damn well you come from the continent like the rest of us. But you know that if you roll up that sleeve and give some blood, your whole I ain't from Africa theory falls all the way the hell apart. So again, I respect your right to not be African, but I am. So please keep your I ain't from Africa ass off my Twitter. Keep your I ain't from Africa ass off my Facebook. And keep your I ain't from Africa ass off my Instagram. Now, before I open this up, let me just make a few points. As I said, coons shouldn't play freedom fighters. I don't care where they come from. Number two, British actors, like actors from anywhere visiting another African population, should speak up on behalf of the family and their local struggle. Africans visiting another African family should be sensitive to tendencies by the white power structure to use one group of Africans against the other. I believe, Dr. Umar, speaking for myself, I believe that there is an agenda to prevent American Africans from playing their very own freedom fighters and heroes from their very own communities in deference to British Africans to help maintain and reinforce the negative image of American Africans on the big screen and in the media. I'm going to read it again. I'm going to read it again. I'm going to read it again. Dr.UMAR believes that there is an agenda of the white power structure to prevent American Africans from playing their own freedom fighters from their own community in deference to the British African to help maintain and reinforce the negative images of African Americans on the big screen and in popular media. And I would argue that our British African brothers and sisters have an obligation if they see that they're being used to speak up and out about it. Just like if the American African sees that we're being used against our British African brothers and sisters, we got to speak up and out about it. Everyone for everyone else. It is all Africans for everybody. It is one for all, and it is all for one. No group is better than no other, and every group has to be held accountable. Let me continue. By using the British African to play the American African leader, by using the British African to play the American African leader, the white power structure is able to maintain a black presence in these films that is devoid of any post-production activism or follow-up that builds upon the momentum that the film creates. I'm going to read it again. I'm going to read it again. I'm going to read it again. We got a coon in here, block party. And she got a weave in her damn head. Get your ass out of here. Let me read it again. By using the British African to play the American African leader. Remember what I said. The British African actor can come to America and play as many roles as they want. I have no problem with them coming and playing American Africans on film. I have no problem. Daniel and the rest of them can play all the roles they want. But you cannot play my leader. You cannot play my ancestor unless you have kinship with me, unless you're going to speak up for me. And if you notice that you're being used against me, you're going to do something about it. That's all. You can play Michael Jordan. You can play Jay-Z. You can play the Negro Leagues. You can play a black doctor, a black lawyer, a black father. You can play a black criminal. You can play whatever you want. But you do not play my freedom fighters if you don't consider yourself to be in solidarity with me. You do not play my freedom fighters if you do not consider yourself to be in solidarity with me. Let me read it again. By using British Africans to play American African leaders, the white power structure is able to maintain a black presence in these films that is devoid of any post-production activism or follow-up by the lead actor that builds upon the momentum that the film creates. Are y'all following me, brothers and sisters? Are y'all following me, brothers and sisters? Are y'all following me, brothers and sisters? Now, I see some cooning going on my Facebook. I see some of my Hispanic Africans making some jokes. Now, I don't know if you consider yourself African or Spanish, but I need you to make up your damn mind. If you consider yourself African, Latino, you shouldn't be making them comments. And if you consider yourself Spanish, get your ass off my live because you ain't part of the family. I'm going to say it again. If you Afro-Latino, you shouldn't be making them comments. And if you damn Spanish, you identifying with your white blood instead of your black blood, no problem. Hop the hell off my live right now. Okay? Como está usted? Get your ass off my live. Okay? We ain't got time for games. We ain't got time for games. Black people in trouble all over the world. Black people in trouble all over the world, brothers and sisters. Okay? Black people in trouble all over the world. We ain't got time for games. If you don't want to be African, no problem. Get away from me. My whole life, my whole struggle is for the liberation of Africa and her children with no bias to none. I am neither biased nor partial to any portion of the African family. I am neither biased nor partial to any portion of the African family. Let me hurry up so I can get to you all. Fred Hampton said everything is political. So don't be talking about he's just an actor. I don't want to hear it. If Denzel Washington does some cooning, I'm going to call his ass out. That's right. Somebody brought up the issue. They said, Dr. Umar, what about all the American Africans who have played South African leaders? Nelson Mandela was what's my brother from Empire? Terrence Howard played Mandela. Jennifer Hudson played Winnie. Morgan Freeman played Mandela. Denzel played Biko. And guess what my opinion is? It's no different. I want my South Africans to listen to me now. I want my South Africans to listen. If my Zulu and Xhosa and Swazi brothers and sisters in the Republic of South Africa, who I miss so much, if they say, Dr. Umar, they're constantly using American Africans to play us and the South African actors are being overlooked. If you tell me, Dr. Umar, they keep coming to America and every South African freedom fighting ancestor is being played by an American African, I'm going to speak up and speak out about that. That's not right. That is not right. How dare you never give a South African a chance to play Nelson Mandela? How dare you never give a South African a right to play Steve Biko when they gave birth to Steve Biko? How dare you never give a South African actor the right to play Winnie Mandela when they created Winnie Mandela? Like I said before, I am consistent. I have one set of principles, and they are the principles of Pan-Africanism. And I don't care if you're a coon in Africa, or a coon in England, or a coon in America, or a coon in the Caribbean, or a coon in Canada. I'm going to call the coons out. And anybody who take offense to it, so be it. It's unapologetically African over here. I'm the father of unapologetically African. I'm the author of it. That's my movement. I invented that. Whenever you see the words unapologetically black, whenever you see the words unapologetically African, I'm the father of that. That's mine. Let's continue. Somebody also said, well, wait a minute, Dr. Umar. British Africans aren't playing all your heroes. Queen Latifah played Bessie Smith in 2015. Viola Davis played Ma Rainey just a few months ago. Chadwick Boseman played the Black Panther. Mike Coulter played Luke Cage, but what you're missing out, Ma Rainey wasn't a freedom fighter. Bessie Smith wasn't a freedom fighter. Black Panther is a fictitious hero. Luke Cage is a fictitious hero. Listen, using American Africans to play entertainers, that's irrelevant. I'm talking about the freedom fighters. I'm talking about the liberators. I'm talking about the political leaders. That's what I'm talking about. Not no damn singers and comic book heroes. I'm almost done. Since 2013, with the box office success of 12 Years a Slave, since 2013's box office success of 12 Years a Slave, which starred the Nigerian brother with the white wife, there have been a steady stream of British actors playing African heroes. Consistent, not once in a while. They're using them for everyone. And I'm asking my British Africans to recognize there's an agenda. If my British Africans cannot recognize that, then the systematic unemployment and disenfranchisement of American actors playing their own heroes. And you're not a Pan-Africanist, you're a tribalist. Be honest with yourself. Then you're not a Pan-Africanist, you're a tribalist. Be honest with yourself. Then you're not a Pan-Africanist, you're a tribalist. Be honest with yourself. I got a few coons on here from the UK. I know most of my brothers and sisters from the UK are not coons, but we got a couple British coons over here. So I'm going to send them to the block party. Probably got a white girlfriend and everything. But let's keep on going. I want to be clear. I'm only concerned about non-American African actors playing leaders. I don't care about no other role. I don't care about no other role. I'm only talking about the leaders, brothers and sisters. I'm only talking about the leaders. That's all we're talking about here. Okay? Any other role is fine with me. Like I said, you're going to play our ancestors? No problem. You cannot be a coon. You must be in kinship with us, and you must speak up and out when you see systemic discrimination taking place. That's all we saying. That's all we saying. Okay. I'm about to turn it over, open it up. I want to hear what you all think. I want to be clear. Today's conversation is to bring clarity and solidarity. Today's conversation is about bringing clarity and solidarity between the American African and the British African. I am about Pan-Africanism. I want a healthy dialogue, because if Africa is going to be free, and if Africa's children are going to be free, the American African and the British African are going to have to work together to help liberate the mother continent. I'm going to say it again. The British African is in the most powerful European kingdom in the world. The American African is in the most powerful economic center of the world. So there is no liberation for Africa and African people without the British African and the American African working in solidarity. So this conversation is about unity, brothers and sisters. It is about unity, and it is not about anything else. What I'm saying is this. One day when I become an ancestor, there may be a movie made about me. There may be a movie made about Dr.UMAR Ifatunde. And if you're going to sit here and tell me that the man who plays Dr.UMAR, and I don't care if he's British African, I don't care if he's American African, I don't care if he's continental African, I can be played by any African as long as they are in kinship with me. But if you tell me the person who's going to play me, I don't care if he's from Philadelphia. I don't care if he's from North Philadelphia. He could be from Susquehanna Avenue. But if you're telling me that an actor from my hometown is going to play me on the big screen and he got a white wife, or he believe in multiculturalism, or he believe in capitalism, or light skin supremacy, or dark skin supremacy, if the person playing me come from my own block in Philly, if he is not a Pan-Africanist, I will turn over in my grave. I will turn over in my grave. Don't you dare let somebody who don't represent what I represent play me. So it does matter. It is not just about acting. You're dealing with the sacred representation of the struggle of an esteemed ancestor, and the person who plays and replicates the sacred life and struggle of an esteemed ancestor should have the energy and passion and connection with the ancestor that they playing. If it ain't nothing but work, if it ain't nothing but a job, if it ain't nothing but acting, then you don't need to be playing it. And you could quote me if you want.